Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my plans for league starting in the private leagues. I'm going to be playing the Atlas Invasion with Pohx League 2.0. Had a lot of fun in Pohx League 1, and I'm excited to run it back. Hopefully, a lot of people will end up joining, and we can get a decently sized economy going. But what am I going to be doing? It's going to be an Energy Blade Spectral Helix, or as I like to call it, a lightsaber throwing Jedi. You can see with the skill, this is what it looks like. You get to throw a lightsaber and it swirls around you. To me, that's very thematically cool. Why am I doing this? Why now? Spectral Helix was something I never played previously. And the reason I never played Spectral Helix initially was it was a good skill, but I thought it looked lame. Like, Spectral Helix had no MTX for it at the time when it was released. And it was just like a pretty subtle look of the weapon you're throwing around. And I was like, it's not really for me. But I didn't realize you could do something like turn on Energy Blade, and all of a sudden you have a lightsaber. You know, it actually is like a free MTX, so to speak. So to me, that is cool. Whether or not it's good, that remains to be seen. I kind of like to just wing builds and send them and see how they go. But I'm going to give you the rundown of my plan and how I think this will work. Number one, a cool thing about doing a build like this is your 6-link is extremely cheap. Something about League Starts is usually a lot of your power is gated behind 6 links. They're not available very early on. With an Energy Blade build, the cool thing about this is I could grab any random melee-based weapon that's a 2-hand that has a 6-link. We're talking corrupted 6 links, garbage 6 links, bases that people don't care about, very cheap, and we can make it turn into an Energy Blade. As you can see, we have a staff here. Boom, staff becomes an Energy Blade. As you can see, I put a random garbage 2-hand mace, and I'm gotta make sure I actually don't lose the skill because I swapped it out, so I'm just gonna put this up here. Boom, becomes an Energy Blade. Put on a garbage axe. Boom, becomes an Energy Blade. Put on a sword. And you guessed it, boom, becomes an Energy Blade. We can't do something like a bow. Bow has restrictions because there can be like a quiver and stuff. So you can't do that. But any melee-based 2-hander can become an Energy Blade. So number one is we can get an early 6-link for very cheap. Random corrupted 6 links, whatever it is. It overwrites the stats and just gives you the extra whatever flat is based on your energy shield amount. That's point number one. And then let's go ahead and look at point number 2 and 3 and whatnot, which is in the POB for basically my generic plan. Now, full disclosure, I promise nothing. I do not promise this build will work. I'm not going to promise you're going to have a good time. It might suck. I don't know. This is just what I think will be fun, and this is what I'm going to play. And you can copy it if you want to or don't. It's up to you. Anyways, how I want to play this character is I've been thinking through what I like to do on League Start. And believe it or not, I am a Righteous Fire addict. And I think Righteous Fire on a Scion League Start is actually pretty decent. By roughly around 16 to 20 range, you will have Regen Mastery, which is all you need to turn on Righteous Fire. You'll have a decent amount of percent damage, some regen, and you'll have your mana solved relatively early on. That's a good package. And then later on, you know, as we go towards level 30-ish, we can expand, get good max res, we can get good life, decent AoE, percent damage. Honestly, Scion Start for a Righteous Fire League Start is probably top 3. I think Templar is the best. Arguably, it has the best starting location. After that, it might be Scion, then Marauder in terms of tree starting location, or Marauder slightly better than Scion. Point is, it is in a good spot where it has decent nodes all at the start and can do a Righteous Fire leveling and League Start pretty well. I like Righteous Fire for League Starting. I think it's very strong on a no gear situation through the campaign. Righteous Fire is one of those skills I always label it as a B tier skill because late game its damage just falls apart. But for early game, I want to use it as a get me through the campaign, get me doing like a couple of heists for some Chaos Orbs. Let me buy a couple of pieces like a cheap 6-link, garbage 6-link. Let me chuck that on my character. Let me start playing Energy Blade. That's my thought process. League Start Righteous Fire, I like it a lot. And then swap it basically 5 hours in after I have gotten a couple of Chaos Orbs and bought a couple of key pieces that will be enough to make Energy Blade functional. So that's the idea. I essentially have a leveling tree all the way to about 70-ish. And the key thing you'll see here is in 70-ish, you'll notice I have Ghost Rife written there. One of the, I think, strongest ways to do a Righteous Fire League Start, believe it or not, is actually a Ghost Rife. An early Ghost Rife can get you in the range of 7 to 10,000 ES within by level 75, which is a very strong in terms of amount of base Righteous Fire damage you're getting out of your ES number. And a lot of your base degen is slightly lower because RF self degen is based on 70% of ES. and 90% of life, which means if you're a heavy ES invested character, the degen is actually a smaller fractional percentage, if that makes sense. So it's easier to get max res for. Point is, the idea is we'll transition into a Ghost Rife setup, which is also getting us closer to swapping into the Energy Blade, because Energy Blade early on, Ghost Rife, again, is the correct option. Ghost Rife is just very good for early ES scaling. A lot of people, I have to get in debates a lot of times where people ask me like, why Ghost Rife or Ivory Tower? The simple answer is Ghost Rife, much better early on when you don't have a lot of scaling, but then later on when you have percent ES and percent life scaling, Ivory Tower blows Ghost Rife out of the water, because the difference is the conversion is where percent ES and percent life are additive on the ES amount you get in the end, whereas with Ivory Tower, it's two multiplicative values where the amount you get from life is scaled up by percent life, and then it's fractionally turned into ES, but then that ES amount is then multiplied again by ES rather than based on an additive formula where both of the increases are applied in. Hopefully I'm making sense. Point is, Ivory Tower, good late game. Ghost Rife, very good early game. We're going to start with Ghost Rife because that's just the stronger option initially before you get decent percent ES and decent percent life scaling. So yeah, anyways, we started as a Righteous Fire life-based character. Maybe once we get Ghost Rife, we start swapping into grabbing a bit more ES nodes. We swapped into stuff like Zealot's Oath, and we swap into doing something like low life. One of the cool things I have found and become to be quite a big appreciator of, if you've looked at my league starts when I talk about doing a Sanctum League start with Energy Blade, is I've realized with Ghost Rife Chaos Res and a couple sources of Chaos Res on your other gear pieces, you can generally get away with running Blood Magic or but Blood Magic is pretty much what I like to do. Running Blood Magic and reserving about 51% of your life. You can get the benefits from low life, for example, things like Brink of Death or the extra aura reservation power, while also taking advantage of not really being that susceptible to die to chaos damage. For example, if you get the bypass mod, which I should have on the tree here. Yeah, the bypass mod plus like 1k life with 75 chaos res, which you can get decently if you start with a Ghost Rife, because Ghost Rife comes with 50 chaos res. You end up being in a situation where you can kind of get away without having a low life protection, like for example a core scaling elixir. Late game you're going to want a core scaling elixir, but initially when you're getting into white maps, you're getting into that early progression situation, having capped chaos res, even though you have a small bit of life with the bypass protection, honestly you're fairly tanky to chaos damage for the most part. So the idea is do an initial RF setup, go towards Ghost Rife, and then as we are working towards having enough regret orbs, we are going to do a respec, which I basically have two trees that are around the 70-ish range, just to give you an idea of what's changing here. And hopefully you can see between the two, hold on. Hopefully you can see, I need to stop. Hopefully you can see between the two builds what is changing here in terms of points. Like this is more respec points than you will have, but not by a large amount. Like we'll need to get some regret orbs for sure. That's part of the plan of this, is we'll need some regret orbs to make this respec worth it, or make the respec happen, but it's not like an overly insane amount. The tree still largely has quite a bit of the same DNA. Now let's get into the Energy Blade stuff. What do I like about this in terms of the plan or how we're going to league start it? So scaling late game of the character. ES scaling means big flat lightning damage. This is very strong. You've probably seen a lot of builds play Ephemeral Edge. This is a very insane thing. Energy Blade versus Ephemeral Edge, the TLDR is Energy Blade is slightly higher damage in terms of it has better attacks per second and it has a bit better in terms of base ES numbers, but ultimately not that much difference. The downside of Energy Blade is it comes with a, how do I put this? It comes with a big less multiplier to your overall ES number. It comes with like 40% less ES or 45%, depending on how much quality you have on it. That's the big downside of Energy Blade. Bit higher DPS, but you lose a bunch of ES for it. Usually a lot less tanky. Ultimately, min-max scaling, Ephemeral Edge usually is the right answer. I'm going to do Energy Blade just because I want to see a cool lightsaber flying around. And initially, Ephemeral Edge might be expensive on the market. We don't know how that's going to be initially when people are first trying to get their first EE and get it set up and going. So you have that to consider as well. Now, aside from that, what are the other cool plans we have? the things that I'm excited about that are cool with the character is, number one is you solve your mana for free with this build. Mana is never an issue, and why is this? You get to go Blood Magic plus Eternal Youth. Eternal Youth essentially gives you permanent recharge on your life pool. Unless you take damage to your life pool, the recharge doesn't turn off. And at baseline, I think that's like 33% life per second or something like that. So essentially, you'll have a character that has, like, let's say 1k life. That's already at 300 sustain per second. And as you scale the character up, you're going to see numbers. This character should be able to get to like 10k base life plus, which is insane per second basically recovery, which means you're never going to have an issue where you can't sustain it in terms of this cost of your skills. You're not going to have a mana issue. So very early on, you get to go Blood Magic, Eternal Youth, and you solve your basically your cost of skills. Number two is, with this combination, you also get very good reservations. So for example, when you go Blood Magic Reservation, this is always one of my favorite things about going to Blood Magic low life character like Ivory Tower, for example, is you get to click Eternal Blessing with no downside. Because Eternal Blessing says you cannot reserve other skills on your mana, but it doesn't stop you from reserving more skills on your life. So what that means is you get one free reservation with Eternal Blessing, 150 free reservation, and then on top of that, you can also get some other additional nice reservation. For example, this cluster here comes with 20 reservation efficiency and the mastery for 20 life reservation efficiency. So for 4 points, I have 40 reservation efficiency. Between Eternal Blessing and that, I'm getting to reserve up to 190, a little bit under, obviously, because you can't reserve 100% of your total life pool. But the point is, we get to go pretty heavy aura investment without really spending that many nodes. You'll see on my E-Blade skills, you'll notice I have the ability to go the Eternal Blessing aura here with Determination. And then I also get to run Haste, Purity of Elements, Flesh and Stone, Vitality, and Precision. This is a ton of reservation space, especially Vitality and Precision. Those are things that are flat reservations, which we can fit pretty easily with a life-based character. With a mana-based reservation system, these are a lot harder to justifiably fit, and we should be able to fit those reasonably well. Now, you look over here and you'll say, but Lance, it says minus 152 life reservation. It doesn't fit. That's because I haven't filled out my gear. All this gear is just no mod items. Once you get higher life pool, the reason this is reserving as much as it is because this reservation for Vitality and Precision, these are flat amounts, right? So if you make your character have a higher flat HP number, this number also in turn goes up significantly, and thus you can fit the reservations. Obviously, you'll get, as you level up, depending on how high your level character is, how much HP you have on your character, you will play with the amount of the level on your Vitality, Precision. Like maybe you'll keep them a bit lower level, but that's the idea. So as for gear, I have the stats that you should go for. Why do I have this on? Okay, where was I? I was talking about the gear pieces real quick. Basically, I just labeled these. Hey, these are the stats you should prioritize. I probably will end up putting together a better trading search for people. If I can get around to it, I'll probably try to do it on stream. And if I do, I will update the PUB that is going to be listed in the description of this video. But I make no promise on that. I'm just planning to do it. We'll see if I get around to it, because I also want to do some practice prep of doing a league start test with Scion, actually practicing the run a little bit and getting used to it. But that's the idea. So this tells you roughly the stats you want to prioritize. Ultimately, you'll figure it out as you go. Rares are the idea here. And then there's some options for some early uniques that are pretty decent for the build. You don't have to do them, but rares would be or Ghost Strike you have to do. Other than that, rares work pretty well, and then Crown of Eyes late game will be an option. So anyways, as I was saying, benefits are you get big reservation from doing this mastery. Another thing I like about this character is when you click Eternal Youth, you have a pretty large, insane amount of base recovery per second to start out with. And what does that mean? You can afford to click something like Blood-Soaked Blade, which gives you a very high uptime on a tincture, which means you can go something like Sap of Seasons, which scales pen based on how many mana burn stacks are on the flask, and thus scales to an insane amount of pen. So we get a lot of pen, or you can just use a regular tincture and just have very high uptime on it. That is up to you, but I think that's a cool feature as well. We get to do something like that. Another cool feature I like about this is because we're doing Ghost Wraith, initially, it'll be very easily to keep our accuracy over our life amount. So we can click Precise Technique. With Precision, combined with a Jug Ascendancy, we should be pretty easily getting higher accuracy than we have life. Maybe we'll have to grab a couple accuracy nodes, like for example, Weathered Hunter, but I'm going to feel that out depending on how much gearing we have in terms of life versus how much accuracy we have on the build. So I think that's going to be kind of cool as well. Another thing I like about this is Jug also comes with endurance charge scaling. So later on, when we get a few levels, we can grab endurance charges for DR there. On top of that, we have, of course, cannot be stunned, which Ghost Wraith, one of the biggest problems with going Ghost Wraith is you have a stun issue, and this Ascendancy solves that. And then late game, or basically just when you get Core Scaling Elixir, Pathfinder Ascendancy allows you to click Core Scaling Elixir, while also giving the option of doing Mage Blood later on if you want to be Giga Fast. So it has the best of both worlds in terms of that as well. So that is some of the ideas for the life-based setup. Early on, we'll start out as Ghost Wraith. I'm going to see if Divine Shield plus Forcing Indetermination, maybe a little bit of hybrid armor ES pieces throughout our helmet, gloves, and boots. See how that plays out. I'm not convinced that it will really work out. Maybe we have enough armor scaling between the armor nodes here, here, and here, but I don't know if we actually do or not. So I'm going to feel that one out. We'll see how that goes. But initially, I think that's my game league start plan. So, Righteous Fire, into Righteous Fire, Ghost Wraith, into a bit of a respec, into getting a couple pieces that'll make Energy Blade work. Essentially, basically, you need a Ghost Wraith, and you need maybe some pieces with decent flat ES or decent flat life, along with a little bit of int, a little bit of strength. All that stuff goes a long way. So yeah, that's the progression of the character. And as for late game progression, in terms of overall scaling, what is the idea of the character? Number one is Crown of Eyes with Ivory Tower with Scion is a very potent combination in my opinion. What is the reason for this? Well, if you've seen, you can look at my videos on Giga Righteous Fire or Gagarf, Righteous Fire Scion. It was a strength stacking build with Ivory Tower. And what this does is you stack a bunch of strength, which gives you a bunch of life. You put on Shaper's Touch, which makes your strength also give you percent ES. And then you put on Ivory Tower. And the combination is big strength gives good life. Ivory Tower turns that life into a bunch of ES, and then the strength also then scales that ES to big number. Big ES number mean high damage on Energy Blade. So that gives us a huge flat Energy Blade. We're gonna be able to scale a very big flat number on our Energy Blade. That's point number one. Point number two is that is also strong defensively. So it's a big ES number, which is good for damage, but it's also good for overall EHP, overall tank. So point one is a very strong baseline of scaling. The other thing that happens when you grab strength is you get percent damage based on how much strength you have, but that percent damage is 2% physical. So what we can do is we can grab Iron Will, which makes it generic percent damage, and then we can grab Crown of Eyes, which makes all that generic percent damage give us 1.5x. So what ends up happening is when you have 10 strength, instead of 2% physical damage, you get 3% attack damage, which then means if we scale 1,000 strength, that's 300% damage, 2,000 strength, that's 600% damage, 3,000 strength, 900% damage. You get the idea. For Gagarf, when I did the Gagarf Scion, I think I got in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 strength. Keep in mind, that was when Crucible was a thing, and that was very high-end gear. But you should realistically be able to get to 2,000 to 3,000 and then 3,000 plus on the very high end, which is still very good for the scaling. So that's the idea there. You get base damage, you get base defense, and then you get percent damage scaling. It's solving some pretty important factors right out of the way in terms of base scaling. There is a future for the build where the more you invest into it, the more you get out of it. I like to make characters that have a good scaling, like vectors, where the more you invest, the more you get out of it. And that would be the baseline of the plan there. I haven't played Ivory Tower in over a year, and I just kind of missed it. So I'm kind of excited about playing it again. And yeah, that covers some of the basics. If you're wondering why Scion versus a Inquisitor or versus whatever option you're thinking of, the reason that, or the thing that's strong about Scion is you get the Scion start, which is this right here, where you get to abuse Unnatural Instinct, Light of Meaning, you get to abuse Lethal Pride, stuff like that. Very strong in this area. Scion does not need to use Balbala, which means Scion can save their belt slot. Balbala doesn't work with Mage Blood, but Scion works with Mage Blood. So for example, late game, you can still be a very fast character, whereas something like an Inquisitor or a Templar based, usually you have to give up that mage blood, you have to give up that speed, and that can feel a little bit bad in terms of the min-maxing aspect of how far do you want to take a character. The other advantage of Scion is a bunch of extra passives. Scion gets, I believe, about 5 extra passive points from the Scion tree, which passive points are premium for a stat scaling build, along with you get a bunch of extra free stats. Late game, this character will get Chieftain Node for percent strength, flat strength, probably stick with Pathfinder, and maybe for a Forbidden Flesh, we'll consider something like a Guardian for Giga Sustain. Maybe we'll consider something like an Occultist for regen, +1 curse, and can't be stunned. I'm working that out. We'll see what I end up deciding to do. I haven't really thought that far ahead ultimately. So that's the rough idea of the game plan. Do what you will with that. This is what we're going to do. If you want to play it and copy it, you can. I promise nothing in terms of quality. I just want to play a cool lightsaber throwing character, and that's the rough game plan. On stream, we'll be figuring out maybe a buy list for generic, decent, rare gear for the character, and we'll send it from there. I'm probably going to do some update videos. I don't know if I'll do them one every day, but maybe I'll do an update video every time I get some significant upgrades for the character. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to play Pohx League. For anyone wondering, how do you join Pohx League? I'm going to give you the rundown right now. I will have a link in the description of this video. I will have a command on my Twitch that'll be labeled !Pohx League or something like that. In Pohx's own Twitch channel, you can type !Private League, and there's a link right here. If you click the link, it will prompt you to log in, and it'll say, do you want to join the league? And you just click yes. Right now, it's at 3,500 players. When I started recording this video, or right before I started recording this video, I had joined not even like 30 minutes ago. This was at 2,500 players. And as people are waking up, I think the league will start to fill up. Hopefully, it'd be cool if we hit 20,000 players. I think GGG is trying to say, I dare you to hit 20,000 players again. Maybe it'd be cool if we did. I bet if we do, we can convince them to raise the cap for the league, and it'd be a lot of fun. I don't know if we're really going to get to 20,000 players. That'd be kind of crazy, but we'll see. Maybe a lot of people want to log in and just play some PoE. I know a lot of people are burnt out on doing settlers for the umpteenth time in a row. My thought process is I'm going to get my easy 4-link early on from the black market, and then I'm going to ignore settlers and just enjoy having 5 Atlas bosses in every zone. It's going to be hectic. It's going to be pretty fun, I think, and honestly, I just miss playing PoE. It's been, you know, we played the PoE 2.2 launch. We played Last Epoch. Those games, they're good for about a week, but for me, PoE is the game I love to play. PoE 1, that is, and I'm just excited to run it back another time. I would prefer this, and I'm logging in. So that will be how you can join this. It'll be in the description of this video, or you can type the command in Pohx's channel, or in my channel, or I think there's going to be a few other streamers that are probably doing Pohx League, like for example, maybe Tai, maybe Sushi, probably Arrow. I think there's gonna be quite a few people logging in. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoy this video for what I'm planning to do for Pohx League Start 2.0. As always, take care, Exiles. Peace out and have a good one.